All right. Welcome, everybody. This is the workshop that you signed up for, Connecting Parents Through Clear Boundaries. I'm super excited. It's the first of its kind that I have brought to my audience. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. So for those of you who don't know, my name is Isa Shanmugam. I'm a life coach and a parenting coach, and I should say a conscious parenting coach. And I help women self-heal so that they can deepen and strengthen their relationship with their kids. And so today's workshop is really going to help you get a clear idea on, why might I be having such power struggles with my kids? Because really, that's what boundaries is about. But first, I want to, start by telling you a story. Stories are always so easy to listen to and connect with. I want to take you back to 2020 when we were at the height of COVID. And my kids were obviously about 3 years younger than they are now. So I had a 6-year-old and I had a 9-year-old. And we were going through one of the toughest periods of our life as a family because my youngest was experiencing extreme daily temper tantrums. He would have so much rage. Like I'd never experienced that kind of anger in my life from anyone ever. And here was a 6-year-old experiencing so much rage, meltdowns. And this would be set off what to us seemed like a simple no. It would involve physical outbursts of like slamming doors. We've had doors damaged in our house because he would slam them so hard. And as parents, we were terrified of like, what is happening during COVID in 2020 in our household. And as a result, so we were feeling powerless and helpless on how to help our son to calm down. And at the same time, my youngest son's behavior was starting to impact my oldest son's behavior as well. My oldest son withdrew and started having, bouts of anxiety anytime he started feeling like his brother was raising his voice. So we were clueless. We were getting family therapy at the time, but it didn't feel like it was helping. We really didn't understand what the root cause of the problem was. We knew it was probably due to COVID, maybe. We didn't really know. And so right at that time, it just so happened that I had enrolled in a breathwork program to become a certified breathwork coach and a facilitator. And during the first 3 months of what was a total 6-month program, I had to go to breathwork sessions personally and practice breathwork on myself so that I could become, an expert in the modality. And during these breathwork sessions, we were led to connect with our inner child. And I want you to know that by this time in my life, I had done so much interpersonal work. I had done so much self-healing. I had done so much mindset work. So I thought, I was pretty far along in this personal development journey and healing journey. And I was like, I don't know how much deeper I can go. And in these breathwork sessions, I tapped into the rage that my inner child had felt in her life, which I didn't even know existed. I remember one day, I'd done the breathwork session. I had expressed rage through breathwork. And, later on, I'll tell you how that exactly works. But I felt the rage in my body. I released it, and I felt my inner child release so much of what had been suppressed and repressed within her. So I finished that. And then that was also the night my youngest was having yet another meltdown. And I remember walking into his room, and for the first time, I didn't feel terrified when he was melting down in that way. In previous weeks and days, I would walk in with such a heavy feeling in my heart of how am I going to control this individual, this, my child. I would go into it as though I was going into a war zone. Right. But after this breathwork session, something inside me shifted. Yes, his behavior was still so scary and terrifying, but it didn't get inside of me. I was able to take control of my own emotions and not let his emotions affect me. I, of course, cried with him because my child was in pain and suffering, right? Not knowing how to manage his own emotions and anger and fear that he was feeling. Of course, I was upset. But there was a little bit of a distance between what he was feeling, what I was feeling, and also the sense of safety I was feeling the same moment. It was all simultaneous, and I had never experienced that before. And instead of trying to calm him down, calm down, stop, right? Instead of forcing his timeline to calm down, all of a sudden I had all of this patience. I was like, it's going to take as long as it's take, right? And I sat with him and I was just there, a safe, calm space as he was in the storm. And something happened that night that had never happened before, which was what would have taken about 45 minutes to an hour for him to calm down. It took 20 minutes that night. And that's when I realized, oh my gosh, I really have tapped into something here. And what that was it wasn't about changing him. It was never about changing his behavior. Let's fix him. It was never about that. I was focused on the wrong thing. It was about what do I need to change within me so that I can help my children, so that I can connect to my son when he is falling apart. Okay, so in my family back then, right, boundaries were a joke. A typical day, this is what you'd see. My kids would be talking back, yelling, things would be thrown, doors would be slammed, a lot of defiance, being ignored, and a lot of temper tantrums. And as parents, we were negotiating, we were yelling, pleading, begging, arguing, threatening, or blackmailing. With like a show of hands, can you just let me know, like, this is kind of similar to what's happening in your home, or if you experience any of this? Yeah, I see some people there. Or if you just want to do the raised hand, that little reaction that you've had. Or you can turn your camera on. You know what? I'd love for you guys to turn your camera on. I'd love to see your faces when I'm talking to people instead of white screen. That would help me out so much. Beautiful. Beautiful. All right. And when that kind of behavior exists in the home, this is the emotional environment, right? The kids are probably feeling so angry, frustrated, confused, misunderstood, powerless, rejected, right? And feeling probably not enough. And as parents, we feel annoyed, resentful. I do all of this stuff for you, and all I ask in return is for you to behave in certain ways. Is that too much to ask? Right? Dissatisfaction, worry, doubt. How are they going to turn out? Am I doing all the right things? Nothing seems to be working. Sometimes we even feel like desperation of like, I've tried everything and I don't think anything's working, or I can't fix this. And fear. We all live in so much fear in subtle ways and really big ways. So this is the emotional environment. So I'm sure you're all having the question. So just tell me, why do they have such a hard time following the rules and routines of the household? Is that so hard to ask? Okay, so here's the thing. You're going to hear some information today that maybe will not sit well with you, or it's going to feel uncomfortable hearing it. I just want you to be open and receive it and not try to judge. Okay? We're going to caveat that here. All right. So I first want you to know it's not because your kids are bad or terrible listeners or lazy or flaky, or they want to make your life difficult. That is not their intention at all. In fact, kids live to please us. They want our approval. That is what their entire intention is, right? And it's also not because you lack willpower or you are a terrible mom or dad, right? It is not that at all. We tend to self-blame and self-judge so much. Well, it's just probably, I'm just a terrible mom. I wasn't cut out for this, right? So the reason that you have a hard time with boundaries is because most people put the responsibility of change entirely on their kids, when it's in fact us who should be making the vast majority of changes. Right? I want you to think about it. I want you to think about a course of a day that you tend to have a lot of fights with your kids. Right? And think about, how often have I reflected and thought, what is it that I need to change about me? Instead of always pointing the finger or putting the onus of responsibility on my child to change. Right? When I think about that, I'm like, I still do a lot of that, right? I've changed a lot of my behaviors. But we assume boundaries are not being stuck to because I laid the rules and my kids just don't listen. So they need to change. But if the boundaries are not working, it's us that needs to make the change. Either we need to change the rules, right? Or we need to change ourselves in how we implement the rules. Our children are not the grown-ups. We are the grown-ups. They're looking to us to lead them. So if what we're doing isn't working, then we've got to make those changes. All right. So I'm sure the next natural question you're asking is, okay, so tell me what I have to change. So I'm going to share with you 3 things. We're going to dive deep into 3 things that we are going to focus on. All right. You're going to hate this. I told you you're going to hate a lot of the stuff that I'm going to tell you today. We have to say more yes to our children. I'm going to dive deeper into why this is. But first, I'm sure you're thinking, then this is going to take too long. I just don't have the time to keep saying yes because everything that they ask for takes so much time. Like they want me to come play with them all the time, right? Whatever it is that your child might be asking for, they want more screen time, right? I'm sure there are caveats to this, right? I can't say yes to more screen time. Like that is unacceptable, right? I get that. I'm not going to ask you to say yes to every single thing, but you'll understand how to make or discern this formula, okay? And a lot of our fear is they're going to become spoiled if I buy them everything that they want, right? That's where my brain automatically goes. They're going to become so entitled. They'll become even more demanding. I don't want to raise ungrateful kids. I don't want to give them everything that they want because life doesn't work that way. Life's not that easy. I want them to be able to work for it, right? If I make everything easy and they get out into the real world, they're going to have a hard time, right? I get all of that because I also used to think a lot of that. But here's the thing, for that last part, I'm going slightly off script here. You know, we want to create this idea of like, life is so hard. I want them to learn all the things that they need to learn now so that they're not surprised when they get out into the real world of how life actually works, right? But I've actually changed my thinking around that. I'm like, life is hard. Life is hard no matter what. Right? Life throws you curveballs all the time and sucker punches you, right? Our kids are going to have that no matter what, because we have that. We live that kind of life, right? Like everything's going well. And all of a sudden, bam, out of nowhere, something, takes you on a plane. And what I say is let's give our kids an easier life at home, because when they step out and go into their world environment, it is going to be hard. If life has always been hard and you go out and you're like, oh, she was right? Or instead, we give them an incredible, like a safe, grounded place of guiding them without making things hard just for the sake of making it hard. And so when they step out into the world, they go from a really secure place. So I want to give my kids a lot of feelings of security. And I don't do it. And I do that in a way of how do I explain this? I don't want to, when they want to make money, that's a great example. So let's say my kids want to buy a toy, right? And it might be like $100. They have expensive tastes like Legos. And so I don't go into the script of well, you've got to make money and work hard for it. Making money isn't easy, right? That's the script that we tend to go in with, and that's what's happening, right? We are projecting our own fear of, oh my gosh, money is really hard to make, because that is a fearful thought. It is not it's a helpful, right? That's a fearful thought. And we project that onto our kids, right? And your kids then step out and go, man, money is hard to make. I got to work really hard. What set them up with the idea that money can be easy to make? Right? Money is easy to make. Money is everywhere. And I tell that to my kids all the time. They still have to go out there and make money. My still goes out there and mows the lawn to earn money, right? But I don't tell him money is hard to make. I tell him money can be easy to make. Let's help you figure out ways to make that money. And so when he goes out into the world, he goes from an attached, secure place of, you know what, I can figure out how to make money. It was easy back then. It'll probably be easier now. So the way you're setting them up to view the world is very different. Okay, so getting back on topic. So here's the reason of why we want to say more yes to our children. We want our child to love and accept the limits that we set for them. Limits meaning boundaries and rules, right? Because those are limitations. It closes us in, right? We do it for their safety. We do it for structure. We do it for order. We do it for routine. I'm not saying boundaries are bad, right? But they are limits. It limits you. It limits them. We have to help them feel limitless in other ways, right? Our child's happiness depends on their ability to steer the course of their own life. Let me just go to the next. Okay. I want you to think about your child's day, okay? And the number of no's that they hear in a day. And think about how many points of decision they get in a day. How many things do they actually get to choose in a day? Maybe the clothes they get to wear, but even then, it's too hot. Don't wear that. It's too cold. Wear a jacket. I hear myself say that so often, right? You haven't eaten enough for dinner. Eat some more, right? They have a cup, a power cup. And if we don't fill that cup enough on a daily basis, then you will hear your child say a lot of no's, or it'll come out in other ways. Okay. So after this workshop is done, this is going to be followed by like a 5-day challenge. And there are going to be exercises so that you can actually take these into tangible actions, practical tips, and apply them. And, you'll get emails and stuff like that. So if you're having the question of, okay, how do I do this? Like, I just want you to know that it's going to be there for you. Right. But I want you to, if this is resonating with you, I want you to ask yourself, how can I say more yes to my child? So maybe that's when you're in the middle of your work day at your computer and your child comes along and says, like, can you play with me? Right? Of course you don't want to be interrupted because you're doing work. It's work time. But I want you to ask yourself, what harm will come of me saying yes right now? Aside from the discomfort and the inconvenience that I am feeling. Right? The discomfort is I don't want to walk away from my work. I'm actually like enjoying it. Playing with you might not be that enjoyable, right? That's discomfort. Right? It's not pain, it's discomfort. So what harm will come of me saying yes to my child right now? Right? One of my biggest fears and obsession is healthy eating. Right? So when my kids ask for sugar, my immediate answer is no. Right? And I have to ask myself, like, what is the harm in me saying yes? Are they going to become forever addicted to sugar? Because that's where my mind goes. Right? Because that's one of my biggest fears. Because I have an autoimmune disease. So health and nutrition is everything to me to manage my life. So do you see how we project our crap onto our kids and obsess over it? Right? So I have to be very conscious of this question of how can I say more yes to my child? So that when the no's come along, which there are a lot of no's, we as parents, we have to touch our kids and nurture them, right? So of course we have to set limits for them. You want to say all the yeses that you can that are not a big deal so that the big no's stick. Because they're like, you know what? I've had a lot of yeses today and that will happen. My power cup's being filled. They're not consciously obviously going to say those words or know it. But when their power cup is almost full or close to full, you're going to be surprised as to like the compliance that you get. Because it's not a big deal. I've had I've had the ability to, feel like I have agency today over my own life. So this is not that big a deal. Brushing the teeth is not that big a deal. Okay. All right. So number 2, we want to be building more points of connection. I'm just checking on time. We want to build more points of connection. All right. Then we're going to go deeper into what this means. So connection, you're probably thinking, spending a lot of time with them. When we think of connecting with people, that's the first like conclusion we jump to. And with our kids, the usual struggle is I want to spend more time, but I don't have the time. My life is so busy. My career is so busy. And that's all so true. Or you might be thinking, I do connect, but it doesn't seem to be making a difference. Or, I have a lot of clients that tell me, I try to talk to them all the time, but they don't talk at all. Like they just one word answers that I receive. So it's not, I don't feel like I'm really connecting with them. Or you might feel like we end up fighting when I do try to connect. It ends up worse than when we started, right? Or I find it really hard to be present. Or I feel like we spend so much time already. How much more time can you possibly ask for us to spend together, right? These are just some of the things that you might be thinking in terms of like what comes up when I talk about it, right? So here's the thing. Connection is not based on time. Connection is based on presence. So I want you to set aside this fear of, I'm already so stretched on time. Like I cannot give any more time to my child, right? I want you to set that guilt or shame that you might be feeling about the lack of time. Because this is good news. Connection is not based on time. It's based on presence, right? Can you think of a scenario where you have spent maybe 2 hours with someone and felt like I didn't really get to know them that well at all because it just wasn't hard. It wasn't easy to connect with them, right? Like they just didn't let you in. You don't really get an insight into that person. But you spend 15 minutes talking to somebody in line at an airport and you're like, can I get your number? I would love to be your friend. Right? That connection. Because what is happening? There is an emotional connection there. Right? That person let you in and you let them in. How does that happen? So presence happens because you're giving your full attention. And it's not just your attention. You're putting aside your judgment and your fear. Right? That's created by self-awareness. What fear of mine am I projecting onto my kids? Right? And presence is about letting go of the need to fix or change things in that moment. Right? So what I mean by that is going back to my example and my story. I was fully present with my son that night when I experienced my own breakthrough with breath work and I came into that room. In the past, I hadn't been fully present with him. Even though I give him my full attention, I was coming from a fearful place of like, how do I fix this? Something is wrong, right? I don't know how to get him the help he needs. This is not an acceptable way for a child to behave. This is really scary behavior. What will others think? Right? That's all judgment and fear playing in. You will never be able to stop those kind of thoughts. But self-awareness and self-healing helps you put those in a container and set it aside in that moment. Right? And in that night, I stopped trying to fix his temper tantrum. In previous times, I'd be like, what can I say? What can I do to fix it? So he just stops this behavior. And instead that night I was fully present and I was with his pain and suffering and holding him, saying, I am here for you, all apart, and I will hold you without judgment. And I will sit here for as long as it takes. There was no rushing him. And the irony of it is because I took the rushing away, he calmed down faster. Right? And it requires you to slow down. The slowing down actually speeds up everything else in terms of your children getting to a safe place, your children connecting with you. When you choose to slow down, all of those things speed up. Okay, so you're wondering, how do I probably do this, right?
You have been listening to the Becoming You podcast. I am your host, Visa Shanmugam. If you want to experience breathwork for yourself, sign up for bi-monthly breathwork workshops for free. You can attend these from anywhere in the world. You can sign up for Becoming You Breathwork by clicking on the link in the show notes. And finally, I need your help. I am on a big mission to help women step into their true power, wisdom, and beauty so they can show up as themselves and feel free. When women step into their power, they help elevate the whole world. And here's what you can do to help. Share this podcast with anyone who is on board with this mission. Subscribe to this podcast on iTunes and write a review of the podcast if you love it.